Now, switching gears, how do you know it's time to expand your startup? Here to help us understand is Charles Gaudet. Did I say that correctly, Charles?
You did. You did.
Wow, I love it. How are you doing?
What was that? I'm sorry?
I said, how are you doing, Charles?
I'm doing fantastic.
Fantastic. Let's get right into it. Now, how do business owners know when it's time to hire more people and expand their business?
Well, it gets to a point where usually you see a lot of business owners will take upon everything themselves. They're the cook, they're the bottle washer, they're everything. And then eventually you get to this point where you can't take on anymore. So it's a matter of asking yourself, what can I do less? So you start asking yourself, what can I do less more of? You start saying no to more things. And that's a point where you want to take on more talent.
Now, switching gears just a little bit, in a pandemic, can a business actually grow during an economic downturn?
Well, let's think about this for a
Yes.
second. If you look at the industries that have been hardest hit in the pandemic, the one industry that usually most people think about is travel.
Sure.
Is that a fair statement?
Sure.
Well, we just happen to have a client in the travel industry. His largest competitor went out of business within 3 weeks. His second largest competitor was absorbed by a billion-dollar company. And yet our client right now is currently the fastest growing company in his niche, achieving record KPIs 1 month after another. In fact, last week was his highest sales week in the company history, and he's been around for over a couple decades. So why do you think that is?
Well, for me personally, I have my opinion. I don't necessarily subscribe to the belief that macro tendencies will impact you on a micro level if you just find a way around it. But I don't have the answer to your direct question. Why is that?
I guess I gave you a pop quiz, right?
Yes.
Well, when it comes to a pandemic, we're faced with 4 different choices.
Sure.
As a business owner, you can either change the message to meet the market.
Yes.
You can keep the existing message and change the market. You can change both the message and the market, or you do nothing and you cross your fingers, sit in a corner, and hope that things are going to change.
Right.
Sadly, what we've seen is a lot of people have taken that last approach, where they're just kind of waiting for things to change.
Right.
But when you look at the companies that have really made the biggest difference, and in particular this travel company, what it looked at is, okay, the market still actively wants to go somewhere, but they just have to change the message to meet the current market's needs. And just by changing the message, he's skyrocketed and doing really, really well.
So in other words, instead of being reactive, being proactive and adjusting, sort of if you're running a play or in basketball or football, if the defense changes its system, you now have to figure out a way to adjust to that. Would that be fair to say? That just basically adjusting to the different conditions that you're now faced with?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, in my lifetime, there's been 5 inflection points. We're looking at 1987, the crash in 2000, the 9/11 incident, then we had 2008, and right now. And an inflection point basically means there's been a pivotal moment in the way that we do business. So anything that worked prior to the inflection point, we have to reassess and reevaluate, because chances are human behavior has changed so much that it's going to go into a different direction. And so we are in an inflection point, and that means we have to be proactive and we have to look at what changes need to be made in order for us to remain competitive.
All right. So what advice do you have for entrepreneurs who are going through a tough time, who are being reactive, waiting for things to change? How can they become proactive? Generally speaking, industry agnostic, what is some advice that you can give entrepreneurs out there that may be watching, feeling that way?
Well, in every industry across the board, I know we just talked about travel, but you got to start asking yourself other questions, like, why is now the best time in the world for me to be in business? And you have to sort of take yourself from being nice to have to a must have, right? Because the nice to have products and services are going to be the first ones to cut out. But how can you be a must have? And so every business out there, regardless of the industry, has the opportunity to become more that must have and succeed. And, right now, I've been widely quoted as the guy who says, I love a bad economy. And a number of people at first, start to think, why that is. And the reason is because most competitors tend to immediately scale back. That's the first place they go, is where can I cut back marketing and advertising and scale back people and whatnot. But when you look at the companies that are succeeding today, they're not the ones cutting back. To your point, Philip, they're being proactive and they're leaning in and they're trying to figure out, okay, where are the opportunities that are existing and opening up as a result of my competition scaling back.
Love that. We're out of time. I would love to continue the conversation. Some really golden nuggets you dropped on us right here. So thank you so much, Charles, for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
All right.